these guys also comment, but I think in my view, programmatic started as a direct response type of thing. I think today, a large proportion of our brand campaigns are now traded on programmatic and through programmatic tools. So it's an enabler, it's a technology enabler, and it shouldn't be siloed in terms as far as we're concerned.
You don't want to disagree with that?
Well, I would say for in-app inventory today, it is driven by performance. If you look at Facebook's numbers and these app install campaigns. But where we are starting to see sort of the pendulum swing where, big app developers or big game developers don't want, a Candy Crush ad running, no offense, King, but a Candy Crush ad running in Angry Birds, right? They want some brand association with their brand. So we're starting to see a shift in brands actually wanting to buy it. So the trend is moving toward more brands.
The evolution of every medium that you see kind of big budgets coming from clients who are actually making money in that specific channel. If you go back more than 10 years, you will see that Expedia or Amazon or eBay were the big investors in digital, were the first to invest in that channel, and then everyone else followed. And I think we see the same in mobile, that it's the big gaming companies such as King and Supercell and Free and others who are investing because they're making money from in-app purchases. The next ones now are the subscription services like publishers or the Spotifys of this world, and then everyone else will follow. I think that's the natural evolution of the medium. And if we look at how we actually buy the media, then we might be more detached that we might manually buy something, but then there's an ad network that then programmatically buys media on an agency's behalf or client's behalf. So that's kind of what we're seeing.
I guess this arguably ties into the ad units and the ad formats themselves, because performance-based advertising traditionally would be about a click on a banner. Brands would like to use more sort of rich media, more video. What can you tell us in terms of the ad formats that are available and the types of inventory that's available?
Yeah, I think performance, obviously, a 320 by 50 static banner that clicks to the App Store is quite common, but it's very difficult for a performance advertiser looking to get an app installed to run an expandable rich media banner where perhaps it's, you're interacting with Clash of Clans, sort of in a game environment, but that might result in a higher lifetime value of the user. I think it's a balance, and a lot of these publishers are experimenting with ad formats in their own properties and allowing advertisers to kind of take more risks.
Okay, Dave?
So maybe picking up something Alessandra said, I think we're reaching a maturity in the market now where programmatic is sufficiently not novel that their ecosystem's kind of growing up around what is sort of the pipes and the basic optimization and targeting and all of that. So as it regards to formats and picking up on something that Rob just mentioned, we're starting to see like publishers who may use OpenX as the SSP, who want to try out new formats, and they have a tight connection with a demand-side platform like ours, really starting to do interesting stuff around like content integration, and you're starting to see increasingly cool complexity that doesn't drive sort of headaches for the marketer, but rather is sort of like, yeah, that's how I thought it should work right off the bat. So there's a lot of complexity, I would say, between the formats sort of going away. I think there's still probably some back and forth around best environments. I mean, we see that mobile video, both for brand recall and performance, works incredibly well. 300 by 250 for some things may work well, but I think we're maybe sort of at the beginning of developing what you might describe as truly engaging experiences.
Yeah, I think also it depends on the publisher. Again, speaking on the supply side, if it's a game, it's in between gameplay, and it's a different app experience versus an in-streaming feed, more news type application or mobile website. So it's going to sort of have a different app experience for that user.
Okay.
I think from a format perspective, video is growing like crazy, and other formats, and obviously with media is very engaging, but it's also the ratio between production cost and media investment. But I would argue that if you look at the mobile investment, then 50% of that is in search. And, you know, it's a simple text at 25, 35 characters. It's not sexy, but it works, and people invest in that. But what we really want to get to is to personalization at scale. And especially, you know, Facebook challenges us in that area. It's like, how can we actually make that happen? We know so many things about the audience we're targeting, and how can we make it more appealing and more custom to that specific audience. And there we're still missing a little bit the technology. We can experiment and we can actually see amazing results from it, but how can we actually do that at scale? In 40 markets, different platforms, we need technology to help us do that.
Okay. I'm going to ask about the types of inventory and the idea of being publishers, but I'll come back to that in a minute. I sat in on a lot of panel debates yesterday, and the questions from the audience were so late that they were very tiny, very few. So there's a lady that's taken the chance straight away. So let's, and it could be a question, it could be a comment, it could be a disagreement. Just feel free. And if you wouldn't mind telling us your name and where you're from, just so we know. Thank you.
Emily Palmer from Reuters. My question is, it could be relevant to the topic of scale. So this could be for any of you on the panel. How much are you seeing mobile browser inventory be lumped in with desktop browser? And are there differentiations in performance? Are there any trends you're seeing there?
I can answer that. Yeah, so we do at Open Access, we actually tell the buyer that it is mobile web versus desktop inventory. And we also tell the buyer if it's optimized or not, right? So they can determine whether they want to serve whatever type of ad unit against that inventory. So that has seen a significant lift to those publishers where we weren't passing those signals before.
Does it make any difference in these days where, you know, some stuff is responsive, adaptive design? Has that sort of question changed at all from the days when everyone was doing mobile optimized websites or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's up to the publisher, you know, how they design the site. But as long as it's optimized for a mobile experience, I think buyers pay attention to that.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, we've got a couple more. We'll take these two and then we'll go back to you.
Hi, so my name's Barn from SmartByte. So my question really is, we're discussing about mobile advertising, but one thing we haven't discussed is about the mobile operator and whether or not they can give any value to the ecosystem. So we're talking about IDs, data, or even things like bot traffic, being able to prove that it's a real person or not. What sort of views has the panel got on that?
Okay, I'll just because I know we've got two people with operator experience on the panel, let's let Alessandra and Stefan have a go at one first.
All right, so I've just come from Vodafone, so Barry, good to see you. Thanks for the question. I think operators have a role to play. I think, you know, any device has a SIM card in it, and that's pretty much what the operators do in terms of asset today on the device, aside from the network. So there's a role for helping out with the customer identification. So starting to patch up or resolve some of the cookie problems that we have today, but that is also complex because of the privacy issues tied to that. So operators are in a tough spot for that. And I think the other part of the question is also data, right? Operators are sitting on very good first-party data. So if they can unlock that and attach it to a true identification capability and plug it into programmatic, then they have a right to play, I think.
So, I mean, I've worked very closely with mobile carriers across the globe in APAC, Europe, and the US, and they have, as you say, a lot of data, and it's absolutely amazing what we can do. When I actually moved to kind of the more in-app environment, and I realized that there's certain things we can't track because we're like, okay, we can have the MSISDN, you can zero rate, you can do all of these things with a mobile carrier. But what we're seeing that the investment with the mobile carriers is very, very low, and obviously we've here in the UK kind of three mobile carriers coming together, making data available within the legal framework. I think that has not been the success everyone was expecting from the development. I think there has to be far more innovation coming from carriers. They have to reinvent themselves to be able to add value to the ecosystem.
The risk of stating the obvious, I can't remember the number of times I sat on stage with somebody talking about innovation from carriers. Doesn't seem to be something that really happens very often.
I'll say in the case of Weave, if you have three really large telcos that have to agree on a bunch of stuff like that, that has some inherent issues. I think it is happening though, right? Like Singtel has built out a marketing stack, right? So in Mobi, they bought a number of other ad serving and data targeting solutions, and they're rolling it out globally, right? We are partners in a joint venture with Swisscom, who recently acquired an SSP service provider and a number of other DMP assets. Same thing's happening. Verizon Wireless in the US runs data service. So I think this is already happening. And if I looked at it, where the innovation I would think would come from is if the concept of net neutrality is basically being supported globally in some form or another, and your massive fixed investment up front essentially just makes Google money and Facebook money, I think you'd look at ways to monetize it again. So I think this is going to get much more pronounced because at the end of the day, the carriers aren't under any covenants to preference, web traffic, some web traffic over others, and in fact, by law in a lot of localities, they're incited not to. So if you think back 20 years ago, your gateway to the internet wasn't Google, it was logging onto AOL or some other equivalent ISP. I think there's another bite at that apple here in the mobile world that it looks like people are starting to wake up to.
Well, I think a few years ago, it seemed to a lot of people that mobile marketing, mobile advertising was just such small beer for a mobile operator. It wasn't worth them really taking it seriously. Do you think that's potentially changed?
Again, I just look at taking two examples of Singtel and Swisscom, both have made, hundreds of millions of euro bets on these things. So yeah.
And Turkcell always seems to be thought of as a sort of poster child in this sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay, we have one more question if you can remember what it was. Yeah. Get the other back.
Hi, yeah, it's Ben Hancock from Time Out. I just wondered if anyone had any thoughts about the differences between app and mobile web traffic. It's just from kind of the point of view from a kind of a reasonably sized publisher. I'm quite aware we're up against apps with sort of massive scale in terms of traffic, and it kind of strikes me that publishers might kind of encounter some difficulties when we're looking at those kind of markets where we don't have the scale in mobile web.
Can we just throw that back to you quickly? Do you have a mobile site and a mobile app?
Yes.
And do you know what the sort of proportion of people interacting with Time Out on mobile is on each?
Yeah. So we've got in terms of the split between desktop and between mobile and desktop, it's about 55%.
I was thinking more between the mobile web and mobile app.
I mean, we've got in terms of downloads for the mobile app, it's kind of significantly smaller than where we are with mobile web.
Smaller than the mobile web.
Yeah, much more. I think what we've seen as publishers is app traffic kind of drop off a little bit as smartphones have really kind of taken off. I think apps for publishers have shrunk a little bit the last few years.
Fair enough. That doesn't tally with figures I have, like the amount of time people spend in app versus the mobile web, but maybe publishing is a whole different ballgame. Do you want to take that?
I was going to say, I think Flurry's, their data shows that 86% of users spend their time in apps. So users are in apps. But I think what we've seen, at least in our exchange, is obviously, more app inventory coming on board, but mobile web all of a sudden has really kind of taken off. And I think that's due mostly because of Facebook and their changes, I think somewhere in October, where they opened up the ability, instead of closing the app and opening up a web browser, it now opens up within the web view. So social is sort of the new search, right? So a paid post or just a post within Facebook can drive mobile web traffic significantly. Even if you spend a lot of time trying to get apps installed, you can probably leverage the mobile web environment.
So maybe I can add to that as well. I mean, we know that there are more than 1.2 million apps on the iOS App Store alone, but quite a few of them are actually what we would call probably zombie apps because they're never used, right? So they're being used once. And then if you look at the entire ecosystem, the apps we're seeing there, a lot of them are either Facebook or Google related, so it can be, the main Facebook app or the Messenger app or, Gmail and others. But then you have huge publishers such as Rodeo with more than 2 billion downloads. So these are not your classic publishers, you know, from the desktop world, but completely new ones. And in order to tap into that inventory, it's extremely powerful. But I would say, you know, if you are